In June, my husband and I got sick, so we decided to close. Then we both got sick, and then we went home, and my husband Joe ended up in the hospital. I was homesick for another week. He was, after 3 days in the hospital, sent to ICU, and he's been on a vent for 8 weeks now. He's gotten a little bit on his thumbs, a little movement, so he's not, at this point, completely paralyzed. He's going to have to go for the surgery, and hopefully he'll be able to cover, but everybody's told us that he wouldn't, and here we are 8 weeks later, so we're not giving up on him.
Progress.
Little progress, but it's progress for sure.
Give me a sense of that decision to reopen the restaurants. The why as your family is in the middle of this.
Well, I have no choice. This is our only income. One of my ex-employees, who's now really part of my family, had set up a GoFundMe just for me and Joe to handle exorbitant medical bills. But I've used a fair amount of that to keep the restaurants open. You know, the electric doesn't stop, the gas nothing stops. You can turn things off, you can put things on hold. The insurances don't stop, but you can't just walk away from it because you can never get back.
To employees, what role did they play in your decision to be opening the business?
They want to work. They don't want to. They're workers. They've been with me forever, and they want, my success is their success, and they've never missed a paycheck, and they've never missed a day of work.
But they rely on you, too.
Oh, absolutely. We rely on each other. I can't do it without them, and they can't do it without me. Joe is Aiello's. Joe is that big, boisterous, big guy with the white hair, looks right out of a mob movie, talking to every customer with that thick New York accent. They love him, and I'm just the wife. I mean, I do the stuff in the back. Like, we're a team. We couldn't do it. We're like 30 years together. We couldn't do it without each other. But he's my front man.
And Vaughn joins me now from Phoenix. Vaughn, I know you have spoken to several business owners in Arizona. What are they telling you? What is their message for lawmakers in Washington right now?
I've got to tell you first, the Myrah and Joe and their daughters, Mimi and Isabel, those are my people. I grew up with Mimi, went to school with Mimi. This family, the Aiello family, they're a staple of Phoenix here. They've been a staple of my life. And what you have seen over the course of the 5 months in which the pandemic has hit across America is that most people have their own people who have been impacted. And a good number of those people run small businesses like the Aiellos do. And I think what you just heard from Myrah is it. They were shut down for 2 months. They were shut down for 2 months. You know, she told me in the restaurant business, profit margins are thin as it is if you do everything right. But if you take a week off, 2 weeks off, a month off, 2 months off, it's devastating. And that's why Joe is still in the hospital right now. Some signs of improvement, which God bless him right now. At the same time, she opened up this restaurant here last night. This is big. She's got 32 employees, that are relying on their income as well. And that's why when you see those negotiations taking place in Washington that you and Kelly O'Donnell and Leanne Caldwell were just talking about, well, folks out here are waiting. PPP funds, those ran out back in June. Unemployment benefits from the federal government expired a week ago. When you're talking about 32 employees that don't have anywhere else to go, we're talking about ripple effects. And so talking with the Aiello family, you heard Myrah say it herself. They needed to get back. It was no longer an option. Despite her husband being in the hospital, it was necessary to get back out there. And that's what they're doing. And I know, at least on this end, we're cheering them on here.
For sure. Vaughn, we're cheering them on this end, too, and everyone dealing with just such hardships, such health troubles right now. It's just all so compounded. I know that Arizona is still considered a coronavirus hotspot, but the state is seeing some signs of progress. Could you tell us about that?
Exactly. Signs of progress. We should note over the last 4 days, there's been more than 300 deaths, newly reported deaths here in the state of Arizona. And so there are signs indicating that the state here is moving in the right direction. When you look at the number of hospitalizations and the number of ICU beds in use, over the last 2 weeks, you've really seen a drop-off in hospitalizations. Yet at the same time, that's why I repeat that number again, 300 newly reported deaths in just the last 4 days. You saw those numbers really start to change when it was in late June that the governor here allowed states and localities to implement mask requirements. And that's really the governor himself, Republican Governor Doug Ducey himself, has credited people wearing masks here for those numbers here beginning in the state beginning to go down. The other was bars were closed. I would like to contend that also the heat here, it's been 110 degrees for most of July, has kept people indoors and in undesirable conditions to be out and about. But that's where people have to be cognizant, because you hear Joe, you still know that these hospitals are still facing tough circumstances, and restaurant owners as well. Until schools are open, until restaurants are open, life is still hard in these communities. I was talking with Chef Silvana of Barrio Cafe down the road from here, and she was one that was distributing thousands of free meals to homeless and healthcare workers in March, April, and May. Yet all of a sudden her resources ran out. She had to close outright down one of her 2 restaurants. Her employees, she doesn't know whether she has the financial means to continue to pay them. But then when you see unemployment expire, that leaves really difficult questions for these small business owners and for their employees. And so, yes, the numbers are going down here. Thankfully, at the same time, we're far away from having a good grip here on the healthcare side and on the economic side, Allison.
Yeah, Vaughn, still a long ways to go. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing the Aiello family story. Please let them know we are rooting for them. I hope you'll be back again with some good news soon.
Will do, my friend. Thank you.
Coronavirus cases are spiking in New Jersey after the state managed to flatten its curve. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen outside an urgent care clinic in Hoboken, New Jersey. Ron, what is going on at that clinic? Are they reporting more cases?
Yes, the short answer is yes, and they're encouraging people to come in for tests. You can see behind me there's a sign that says no appointments are necessary. That changed because they're trying to increase testing. There was a spike here in cases. They're trying to get out word. We spoke to the manager of the center a little earlier today. Here's what she had to say about the volume of people coming in.
I'm a little bit quite concerned because lately, in the past couple of weeks ago, we had like 0 cases of COVID. Now that we're testing more and more of our patients, our numbers are slightly increasing and we're seeing more positive cases.
And you're encouraging people to come and get tested.
Correct, to the point that we are starting an aggressive testing site. On Mondays and Tuesdays, starting next week, we are going to be testing the whole residents of Hoboken.
And they're hoping in particular that young people come. Most of the cases that have been happening, or a lot of them, a significant portion of them, are people under the age of 40 or so, teenagers and up. And a lot of this has been tied to house partying and celebrations, graduation events, barbecues, showers, baby showers, things of that nature, families coming together, especially down at the Jersey Shore, the beach communities where a lot of people have been, as summers come on, letting down their guard perhaps, taking off their masks, not socially distancing. And that's what the governor here insists is causing the spread. Another thing that the governor revealed today is that contact tracing is, of course, an important thing that we've heard a lot about. He said that 45% of the contacts, efforts to trace people are not happening. And that's to say, when a contact tracer reaches out to someone who's positive to try and get people to contact, 45% of them are not cooperating. The governor made it clear that this is something that you should do. You have a moral obligation to do, essentially. Here's what he had to say about contact tracing.
We need to be perfectly clear. This is about public health, period. No one is out on a witch hunt here. We do not condone things like underage drinking or any illegal behavior, but that is not what this is about. No one is asking questions that have any focus other than trying to stop the spread of the virus.
And the state is launching yet another public service campaign to tell people, to warn people that all the progress that New Jersey has made. Remember, this state was in very dire straits back in March, April, May. The numbers came down when the shutdown happened. All of the opening that they've been doing is at risk, the governor is saying. They're in phase 2 now and stuck here. And of course, we're wondering about schools. All that's at risk unless people start taking this more seriously. Masks, hygiene, distancing, and testing. Allison?
Ron, could you talk to us a little bit more about contact tracing in New Jersey and how they plan to use that to get things on track?
Well, they're trying to hire more people and bring more volunteers on to do this. There was some number, I think he said about there are 15 tracers for every 100,000 population across the state in different communities. They want to double that number. And we've heard this in a lot of places. But the bottom line is that when these contact tracers, when someone tests positive and the contact tracer reaches out to that person to try and find out the 10 or 12 people that they've been near, that person has to cooperate or the whole thing doesn't work. And he said that in 45% of the cases, almost half of them, the contact tracers are not getting the cooperation that they need. So that could be a real big setback, because that's, of course, how states, everybody across the country, around the world, is trying to contain the virus by identifying it, identifying people who've come in contact with them and quarantining them. So, again, the numbers here in New Jersey are spiked at the end of July. The first week of August has been better, the governor said. They're still not where they want them to be, but there's a lot at risk. There's a lot at stake. And this is a critical moment. As he put it, we can't give this virus an inch because it'll take over everything.
No doubt. Ron Allen in Hoboken, New Jersey. Thank you so much for your reporting, and have a good weekend. All school districts in New York cleared to open this fall. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo made that announcement this morning. So how do teachers across the country feel about returning to the classroom? The NBC News social news gathering team caught up with some of them.
If and when science and data supports it, our educators want to be back. There is not one educator that does not want to be back with their students. Not one. There are some places where the infection rates are very low, but then here in Los Angeles, the infection rates are quite high. And there's no way in good conscience I could say I would support educators going back if the science and the data doesn't support it.
I don't feel safe because in the past, we've had issues with cleanliness inside the school. And to now know that, the pandemic is raging, and just a reassurance that the building is going to be cleaned, and that we'll have enough PPE for students and teachers. It's just really hard for me to feel safe going back into the school.
Some of our schools have thousands and thousands of students. Even if you cut that down in half, it's just a lot. And then you think about, okay, that student goes home to their family, or they might go to an after-school program or a daycare, right, before they go home. And then you start to build this web in your head. You start to think of how many people are we interacting with.
We need to take a step back and say, what happens if a student gets infected, and then they infect the rest of the students in the class and the teacher? What is the Board of Education going to do to help? What's the government going to do to help? What's the legislator going to do to help us? The Black Lives Matter, in conjunction with the pandemic, it kind of illuminated all of the inequalities that take place in the Black community, with all of the lack of resources, the disinvestment in communities of color, and then now just the lack of resources even to get education.
Everywhere there's systemic, structural, institutional racism, it's our job to root it out from its very foundations. That means looking at the institutions, programs, and policies to really break those barriers down. Our students are asking for that, and it is incumbent upon us to do that work.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.